Good day, grade 11. I know on the planning it says we're going to do the video for activity 10.10 today, but I'm only going to do half of it because there's quite a lot to absorb. So I think you can, if you want to, you can go through the textbook and you can read through that. But I think the best way for me in the past, the best way for me to explain it is by just start by doing the general ledger. Right, so the first thing that I want you to do is over here, you will see, okay, you have to add this, indirect materials purchased cash, 7,000 Rand. So it's important for you just to add that in because that's not entered and it must be in there because we need that. Right, so once you've done that, you can just now pause the video, write it in quickly, and then we can start. Now you will see there's a summary of transactions. This is about a business, Stormers Manufacturers, the month end 31st of March 2017. We're going to do it only for the month. And then there's balance sheet accounts, and these are all new accounts to you. Okay, so we've got the raw material stock. We've got work in process. So the raw material stock is the account where we buy stock, whether we buy it for cash and whether we buy it on credit. This is where the raw material stock is. That's the raw material. Okay, the raw material, from the raw material, it has to be manufactured. It has to be used in the factory. So it will end up in the work in process account, but not yet. Okay, and then we also have a finished goods stock, and that is where all the manufactured goods, all the goods that have been finished in the work in process account is now transferred to the finished goods stocks, and now it lies there, and everything that is sold is now taken out and taken to the cost of sales account. But we will get there later, and you will see there's quite a lot, and that's why I'm going to split this video into. Right, so gentlemen, these are all new to you. These are all my stock accounts, and they are all assets. Okay, they're all asset accounts. And then we've got a raw material issued. That's also a new account to you. I'll explain just now. Okay, and then all the other accounts that you know. Indirect material, wages, all of these, depreciation. And then I've got my cost account section where I have direct material cost, direct labor cost, and factory overheads. And those three costs make up the cost that I use to manufacture my goods. Those three. Direct material, all the material that is used to manufacture the goods or the units. The direct labor, all the labor that is paid to people who really actually touch the unit, who make them. And then factory overheads, all the other factory expenses will eventually influence the price of my goods. And factory overheads, you know by now what they are. Factory overheads will be the factory rent, factory insurance, depreciation, indirect material, for example, cleaning materials used in the factory, but everything that is used outside the factory or in the admin area or in the offices is not going to influence the price of my goods eventually. So those three are my cost accounts, and I want to get to those cost accounts, and the cost accounts I want to close off to one of these accounts, one of the stock accounts, and I want to close it off to the work in process. Right, so I started for you with the raw material stock. It's got a balance, and I give that to you in the example. The raw material stock, 50,000 Rand. And then just a summary of all my transactions for March. And we're going to see it's cash purchases of raw materials. Now, of course, cash purchases of raw materials, that would go to the debit side of my raw material account, and that will be bank, and it was 45,000 Rand, and of course that will be the CPJ. Right, and then I have credit purchases over there, so that's going to be creditors control, and that will go to the CJ, or that will come from the CJ, and that is 30,000 Rand. Okay, the next entry is direct materials issued to production, 93,000 Rand. Okay, now in which account is my production taking place? In the work in process. So it feels if I issue my raw material, remember now it's a stock account, what happens to it? It decreases because I issue some of it. I've got 50,000 in the factory. I purchased another 45,000 as another 30,000. So I've got a lot of stock, but now I issue it to the factory, to where it's going to be processed. Okay, so what do I do now? If you issue 93,000 Rand, it means I have to take some of the stock and get it out of here. So what do I do? And this all happens at the end of the month, and I'm going to say 2017, March the 31st, and I'm going to issue it, and it has to end up in the work in process, but it takes a long route before it ends up there. So I'm first going to transfer it to the raw materials issued. Okay, so we do use the account that says exactly what happens. Raw materials issued. And this all happens in the general journal, although we don't normally use the general journal to do this. But of course, it has to go in the general journal, but we normally don't show you how. So 93,000 Rand. And in my raw materials issued, it will say 2017, March the 31st. And this comes from, where does it come from? Yes, it comes from my raw material stock, and it's in the general journal, and it's 93,000 Rand. Right, so let's do just a few of these. Now, indirect materials issued to production, first we have to do that entry. The one here, the extra one that I added, indirect materials purchased for cash, 7,000 Rand. So you go to your indirect material account, and on the debit side, you are going to say 2017, March the 31st, and it was cash, so it's bank, and this will be CPJ, and that was 7,000 Rand. Okay, so make that entry first, and then you go back to this transaction. Indirect materials issued to production, 7,000 Rand. Okay, so I'm going to leave that one first, and then just go do a few of these. Right, indirect material, yep, so indirect material is, okay, let's do this one. It's issued to production, 7,000 Rand. Where do I want my indirect material to end up? Indirect material is also going to contribute to the price of my manufacturing goods, but it can't go directly to my work in process. It also has to go first to a cost account. All right, and what account do I have for that? My factory overheads. That's the account that I use for all my factory. All my factory overheads must first be closed off to the factory overheads, and then from here it's transferred to the work in process. Okay, so let's look at these entries. Indirect material is a factory overhead. It's part of my cost, so it has to be closed off 2017, March the 31st, factory overheads. And it's 7,000 Rand. And it's also a general journal. Right, okay, so what else did they say? Wages paid, right? Wages paid 80% direct labor and the rest indirect labor. So what did we pay? So let's write that in. Whether it was indirect or whether it was direct, it's wages. So 2017, March the 31st, and I'm going to write bank and the labor, 30,000 Rand. Okay, and you will see later how we're going to split this up, CPJ. Factory rent paid, 2017, March the 31st, 12,000 Rand, bank. Repairs to machinery, 2017, March the 31st, and that is 2,500 Rand, and that's also bank. To the machinery of the factory, so that's going to be a factory overhead. Electricity paid, okay, doesn't matter whether it's 70% to what and 30% to what area, it's electricity, and we're going to write that in 2017, March the 31st, bank, because it was paid, and we're going to say electricity, and that was 5,000 rand CPJ. And then depreciation on machinery. Okay, so there was depreciation 2017 March the 31st, but of course we're not going to write, what are we going to write here? Never bank. We're going to write accumulated depreciation on equipment or on machinery, whatever it is. Okay, GJ, and it was 2,000 rand. Gentlemen, I'm going to stop here. I just want you to make sure that you know how to do this. This is so far, it's really easy. Okay, just remember that when raw materials is issued, you are going to credit raw materials, and you go directly to my raw materials issued account, 93,000 rand.